ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानामालयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। शारदा शारदाम्भोजवदना वदनाम्बुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं क्रियात्। शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तं पङ्कीकृतमभूद्यया किङ्करीयस्य सामाया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये। प्रह्लादवरदो देवो यो नृसिंहः परो हरिः नृसिंहोपासकं नित्यं तं नृसिंहगुरुं भजे। श्रीसच्चिदानन्दशिवाभिनव्यनृसिंहभारत्यभिधान्यतीन्द्रान् विद्यानिधीन् मन्त्रनिधीन् सदात्मनिष्ठान् भजे मानवशम्भुरूपान्। सदात्मध्याननिरतं वृषगेभ्यः पराङ्मुखम् नौमि शास्त्रेषु निष्णातं चन्द्रशेखरभारतीम्। विवेकिनं महाप्रज्ञं धैर्योदार्यक्षमानिधिं सदाभिनवपूर्वं तं विद्यातीर्थगुरुं भजे। अज्ञानां जाह्नवीतीर्थं विद्यातीर्थं विवेकिनां सर्वेषां सुखदं तीर्थं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये। विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विदुशेखरभारतीम्। ॐ। Verse number 20. आत्मचैतन्यमाश्रित्य देहेन्द्रियमनोधियः स्वक्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्ते सूर्यालोकं यथा जनाः. So, in this verse, what Adishankara Bhagavad-pada is talking about is how the mind, the body, and the sense organs are dependent upon the consciousness, that is the self, Atma Chaitanyam Ashritya Dehendriya Manodhyah Swakriyartheshu Vartante. All their activities are founded upon by the consciousness. This is the same idea that was conveyed in the first few mantras of the Kenopanishad. Kenishitam patati preshitam manah kena pranaha prathamah praiti yuktah keneshitam vachamimam vadanti chakshusrotrah shrotram kau devo yunakti. And then the Guru says, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manaha Yadvachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushchakshuruhu Iti Muchadhiraha Pretyasman Loka Damrita Bhavanti. That is, each of the sense organs are able to derive their ability, their functioning is because of the blessing of the consciousness principle. Knowing this, the student in the Kenopanishad asks, he says, I know that the sense organs are themselves inert, but there is something which makes the eye see. There is something which makes the mind function. There is something which makes the prana function. There is something which makes the organ of speech function. What is it that impels this? What is it that gives the Shakti or the power by which all the sense organs function? And the Guru, instead of directly saying the Atma is the one, he says Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manah. It is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech. Meaning that the impeller of each of the sense organs, that which, because of which the sense organs function, that is the Atma. And the what the Guru had hinted at in the Kenopanishad, Shankara Bhagavad-pada makes it explicit, and he says Atma Chaitanyam Ashritya. It is on the support that is provided by consciousness that all these organs function. And he had given a beautiful example, Yatha Suryalokam Janaha Swakriyartheshu Vartante. Just like people function, go about their daily activities on the basis of the light that is provided by the sun. It is during the day that everyone works and everyone functions. It is because of what? It is because of the blessing of the sun. Similarly, it is because of the blessing of consciousness that all the sense organs and the physical body is able to function. So this is what we had seen in the last session. Now we will look at the 21st verse of the Atmabodha. Dehendriya gunan karmani amale satchidatmani adhyasyanti avivekena gagane nilatadivat. So in this is the important section, the heart of the Atma Bodha, which is talking about the Atma Anatma Viveka. And the reason why Acharya Shankara Bhagavad keeps repeating the same idea is because he wants us to listen to what he's saying and put it into our practice. That is, to constantly perform this Atma Anatma Vivechana. That this discrimination between the Atma and the Anatma is something that we have to do all our lives, because even though consciousness is present everywhere, it is not really apparent, and therefore it requires a highly discriminating, highly subtle intellect to be able to distinguish these things. That is why the effort is going on in the Atma Bodha lecture series by Adi Shankara Bhagavad to um, distinctly perceive the Atma from the Anatma. So here he says, so from verse 16 to 31 of the Atma Bodha, the central theme of Viveka is being talked about. And as long as this Viveka is not there, this discriminating intellect is not there, we take the attributes of the Anatma as the attributes of our own, when the Atma is completely free from this. So here he's saying Atma is Amala Swarupa. So Amala means it is free, it is free, it is pure. So what is it? What does purity here signify? That means it is free from any sort of association with punya and papa karma. And this was the same idea that was conveyed in the Kathopanishad. Anyatra dharmat, anyatra adharmat, anyatra asmat krita kritat, anyatra bhutacha bhavyacha yattat pashyasi tadvada. So Nachiketas is asking Yamadharmaraja, anyatra dharmat, anyatra adharmat. What is it that is distinct from, that is free from punya and papa? The same idea is being conveyed here when Shankara Bhagavad is saying that Atma is Amala Swarupa, and it is Amala. Why is it Amala? What is the Malam that we are talking about? What is the impurity that we're talking about? Karmani. It is the Punya and Papa Karma, which are the results of actions that have been performed. So in Shastra, karma are used in two levels. First is the cause, which is the actions themselves. So there are good activities and bad activities, and they are called karma. And then sometimes the results of that karma are also called karma. So we say punya karma and papa karma, meaning karma phalam. So Atma is free both from the karma phalam, it is also free from karma, the action also. So Atma is ever the akarta, he is never the doer. The and therefore, because the Atma is never the doer, he is also never the bhokta also. He is never enjoys the results of that karma. Enjoy meaning the results of punya karma, suffer meaning the results of papa karma. So Atma is neither the karta nor the bhokta. And that is what he's saying. Dehendriya gunan karmani. So here by dehendriya, he means the body, the senses, the mind. By gunan, he means the attributes of the body, the senses, and the mind. And the next verse, he'll talk about how kartritvam is not actually the attribute of the self. Doership is not the attribute of the self, it is the attribute of the mind. But we'll come to that in the next verse. So here Acharya is saying Shankara, that the Atma, which is completely free from the body, the senses, the attributes, and karmani, their functions, and the results of those functions also, and that is why he is called Amala. And what he's saying, Amale Satchidatmani Adhyasyanti. So people superimpose the body, the senses, the attributes of the body and the senses, the functions of the body and the senses. So when someone is blind, it's actually the organ of sight that is affected, but people say I am blind. When somebody is hungry, it's actually the physical body that is affected, but somebody says I am hungry. When when the body is acting, it will be walking from place to place, we say I am walking. So what do people do? They superimpose the attributes of the body and the mind, they superimpose the activities of the body and the mind, They say, I am born, I am dying, when it's only the physical body that is born and the physical body that dies. So in that pure, distinct, untouched, unrelated, unconnected self, in that Amala Satchidatma, people superimpose the Deha, Indriya, Gunaha, and Karmani. And what is the reason for that? He says, Avivekena, because of ignorance, because of the lack of discrimination between the Atma and the Anatma. They do not see the Atma as a distinct, unique, independent principle from the body and the mind, and therefore they take on the problems of the body and the mind and they superimpose that upon the self. And they say, I am suffering and I have these problems. When really speaking, the self is completely independent, distinct, detached from these things. So, Acharya Shankara Bhagat Pada is saying, Amale Sachidananda Atmani Dehendriya Gunan Karmani cha Adhyasyanti. People superimpose all these things as a result of Aviveka Avivekena. And he gives the example Gagane Nilatadivat. Just like people superimpose erroneously blueness onto the colorless space. So when we look at the sky, what is that actually? That sky is simply space. And space is something that you cannot really see. It is not something that has a form. Now, things have form, space is formless. But despite being formless, people superimpose a color to it and say the sky is blue, when that is a result of some scattering phenomenon. And so they because of the appearance of blueness in the sky, people misinterpret it and say the sky is blue, when really speaking, the sky is colorless. In the same way, Atma, the consciousness principle, is completely free of attributes, but because of an erroneous ignorance, people superimpose the um, the attributes of the anatma and the anatma itself. So there's both a dharmi adhyasa, that is the imposition of the dharmi being the physical body and the mind, but there's also dharma dhyasa. The attributes of the body and the mind are also superimposed onto the same consciousness. So just like blueness is superimposed onto the sky, which in its intrinsic nature is colorless. Moving on to the next verse, verse number 22. ज्ञानान्मानसोपाधे कर्तृत्वादीनि चात्मनि कल्प्यन्ते अम्बुगते चन्द्रे चलनादि यथाम्भसः. So in this previous verse, we had looked at the superimposition of guna and karma, attributes and functions of the sense organs. Here, Shankaracharya is talking about the superimposition of kartritvam, the doership. Now, uh, once we superimpose doership upon the self, there is not a single moment when of rest, because the body and the mind do not rest even for a single instant. They are constantly doing something on the other. Even when we think we are doing nothing, the body is breathing. There are various functions that are going on in the body. Imagine if the body had stopped functioning, it will immediately die. So there is a constant change that is happening within the body. Similarly, the mind also, it is constantly jumping from topic to topic, thought to thought. It doesn't rest for a single moment itself. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna, Arjuna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So the actions of the body and the mind, the moment we superimpose upon the self, it is as though I am constantly moving. So what happens? Because the body and the mind continuously keep acting, we think we are continuously keep acting. And the moment that we superimpose doership onto this, there comes a point when there are things that the mind does willfully. So all those actions we say that we are doing willfully. The reason why a karta becomes a bhokta is because of that will. So what the Vedas are saying is that if one willfully performs an action, then one will necessarily face the consequences of that action. So, whatever is the entity that does the action will face the results of the action also. And if the mind does something which is in accordance with the Shastras, the mind will get the benefit of it. Similarly, when the body is performing some action in accordance with the Shastras, the body will get the benefit of it. Consequently, if the body is performing and the mind is performing actions that are against the injunctions of the Shastras, they're doing Nishiddha karmas, definitely the body and the mind will face the consequences of it. Now, when we attribute the doership upon oneself, the doership which really belongs with the body and the mind, then all the good deeds and the bad deeds of the body and mind we are taking upon ourselves, and are saying, I am doing this, I am doing this. So what happens then? That is samsara. We are then constantly we are analyzing each of our actions. We are worrying whether those actions are favorable, unfavorable, they are good or bad, whether we have committed good deeds, we have committed bad deeds. When Vedanta is saying, when Adishankara Bhagavad Pada is saying, you are not doing anything at all. You are simply standing as a witness. It is the body and the mind that are acting, right? But because of this notion of doership that we have taken upon ourselves, we have borrowed the doership from the body and the mind, and we have taken it upon ourselves. We start thinking, I am doing it, I have done a good deed, I have done a bad deed. Which is why in the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a very, very beautiful mantra. Kimaham sadhuna karavam, kimaham papama karavamiti. Yeah, so what the Upanishad is saying is describing the thoughts of a dying man. And it's saying at his deathbed, that individual is thinking, why did I do, why did I not do good deeds? Kimaham sadhuna karavam. Why did I not do good deeds when I had the physical capacity to do that? And then kimaham papam akaravamiti. Why did I do these bad deeds? So you are constantly examining at this deathbed, because of that notion of doership. He is ruining the fact that he has not spent his life in a fruitful manner doing dharma. Rather, he has spent his life doing papa karma, and so he is going through and reliving all those moments at his deathbed, thinking, ruining the fact that he has not done sufficient good karma and not doing bad karma. What is that? That is nothing but samsara. The notion of doership that you have superimposed upon yourself is samsara. That is why at the deathbed, the Upanishad is saying the Ajnani's gati is like that. He is suffering because he has superimposed the doership upon himself, and is analyzing the actions of his life, and he's saying, I have failed as a human being. I have not done enough good deeds. In fact, I've done so many bad deeds. I am going to suffer. So there is no point um, associating and ruining that fact because of this association with the Atma. It is better to dissociate and simply be a witness to these things. No, Vedanta is not saying do not do good deeds or do bad deeds. Certainly not. The entirety of the Vedas is completely in consonance. At no point will an Advaitin ever accept that the performance of dharma and the avoidance of adharma is something which is not supposed to be done. No, that is not the case. What is being said is, do dharma, avoid adharma, but know that it is you are not the doer of dharma or adharma. It is the body and the mind that is the doer of the adharma. It may appear to the world that you are acting, but to you know that you are not the doer. So in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, here Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunaih karbani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. So all these are actions of the body and the minds. Prakritehe kriyamanani. So that's what Acharya Shankara Bhagavad Pada is saying, kartritvadini. So doership. So kartritvam means doership. Adi here all means bhoktritvam, enjoyership, etc. Kalpyante atmani. So are imagined to be within the self itself. But where do they really belong? Manasopadhehe. They belong to the mind upadhi. So the doership of the mind is transferred to the Atma, and you are thinking that I am doing, I am acting, I am, I know I have done good deeds, I have done bad deeds. Not at all. So we have to realize that the mind will constantly keep acting. The true way to peace is to realize that you are not the one that is acting. It is as Bhagavan Krishna says, ahankara vimudhatma. The individual who is being deluded because of ahankara, of ego, kartahamiti manyate, thinks I am the doer. No, it is rather the body and the mind that is acting. I am merely the observer, the silent witness to these things. So, and the example that Shankara Bhagavad Pada gives in this verse is yatha ambugate chandre ambasah chalanadi. So that is, so he has given a beautiful example again. It is like the reflection of the moon in the water. Now, so there is the moon that is out there, and it is being reflected in a pool of water. Now, when the water ripples, when there are ripples in the water because of some disturbance, for example, it appears as though the moon itself is like getting disturbed. The moon is moving, but in reality, it is not the moon that is moving. It is only the water that is moving, and that disturbance in the water appears as though it's a disturbance of the mind of the moon. Similarly, it is the disturbance that is happening, the doership, the action that is happening in the mind. But because of the reflection of consciousness in the mind, we say, I am acting. But really speaking, I am not acting, it is the mind that is acting. I'm simply blessing the mind to act. All, as in the previous verse, it had been said, Sarvendriyani swakriyartheshu vartante chaitanyam ashritya. So all the body and the mind. So independent of consciousness, the body and the mind cannot act. That is certainly a given because they're inert entities. But when consciousness blesses them, how does it bless them? By illuminating those things. So by illuminating those things, by the reflection of consciousness in the body and the mind acts as though, but really speaking, the body and the mind also cannot act independent of consciousness. Consciousness nature is actionless. So, really speaking, if you ask, what is the one that is acting? Is it the body and the mind? The answer is no. The body and the mind cannot act because it is inert. But is consciousness acting then? No, consciousness also is not acting because the nature of consciousness does not have kartrutvam in it. Then what is it that acts? It is the body and the mind which has been blessed by consciousness, which has been illuminated by consciousness. It is that which acts, and when that is acting because of an avivekena from the previous verse, what happens? We say, I am acting. Consciousness is acting. So Shankaracharya is saying we have to be very careful because all these concepts are so intricately linked with each other. We confuse one for the other. Satyanrithe mithuni kritya ahamidam mamedam iti naisargikoyam lokavyavaharaha. He had said in the Adhyasa Bhashya. We mix up the real and the unreal, and we take the actions of the unreal to be the actions of the real. So here the real is consciousness, the unreal is the body and the mind. Now when consciousness shines on the body and the mind start acting as though, and because of that action we think that I am acting. Just like it is, the moon does not move when the water in which it is rippled moves. Rather, it is only the water or the um, reflection appears to move. Similarly, consciousness appears to move. The reflection of consciousness appears to move. But really speaking, it is not the reflection also that is moving, because the reflection and the original have to be the same. In fact, what is only moving is the reflecting medium, but it appears as though the reflection is changing. Similarly, it appears as though jiva is acting. Jiva is nothing but the reflection of consciousness. But what is speaking is the jiva and consciousness are completely the same thing. But because of the ripples, the action of the body and the mind, we think that I am moving. That is the uh, beautiful example that Shankara Bhagavad Pada has conveyed. So a very subtle point has been conveyed using a beautiful example. So moving to the next verse, Ragecha Sukha Dukkhadi Buddhau Satyam Pravartate Sushuptau Nasti Tannashe Tasmad Buddhestu Natmanaha. So here Shankaracharya talks about a variety of emotional problems. So previously he said kartritvadi. So he had given how kartritvam of the mind has been superimposed upon the self. Now here he's talking about other problems, the emotional problems, such as raga, dvesha, ichha, sukha, dukkha, etc. All of these which belong to the mind, how we seem to think that they actually belong to the atma. Now he gives a very beautiful example, a beautiful logic actually, called Anvaya Vyatireka logic. Now Anvaya Vyatireka logic means if you take two things, okay, and let's take the example here. So what he says is, when the mind is present, we see things like raga. Raga means attachment. So even though the Atma is not attached to anything, what do we do? Because of an association with one particular body, in fact, all the bodies are superimposed on the one Atma. But what do? We because of the reflection that is present in one particular body and the mind, we associate with that body and the mind and say aham, aham, aham. We say this is me. So that raga with the attachment with one body has come, the association with one body has come. And then through that one body, we start associating with other atmas, anatmas associated with that body. So this is my father, this is my mother, this is my husband, this is my wife, these are my children. What are these? These are essentially other anatma bodies only. But what do? We start associating with those anatma bodies. We start developing raga, attachment with those anatma bodies. And then we cannot even contemplate the loss of any of those things. And then we say, yeah, let alone a real loss, even an imaginary loss is a huge problem. This is why in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Arjuna Vishada Yoga, because of his raga, Arjuna's raga, the war has not even started, but he looks at his guru Dronacharya, he looks at his Pitamaha Bhishmacharya, he looks at all Kripacharya and all his relatives, and he says, how can I kill these people? I cannot even imagine an existence without these people. What is that? A deep attachment to various anatma. Because of this, even a powerful warrior like Arjuna is willing to give up his kshatriya dharma. The raga leads to moha, and that moha leads to big problems for him. So what the raga attachment does is, the deep attachment with him, he starts contemplating things that have not even happened, because of which he's saying I am not. He confuses dharma with adharma, and is willing to do the adharma also. See, as a kshatriya, it is his responsibility to punish those that commit adharma. That is his responsibility. In the Varnashrama Dharma Vyavastha, the responsibility of the kshatriya is to protect dharma, punish adharma. He knows for a fact that his cousins have committed a lot of adharma. The Kauravas have committed a lot of adharma. His responsibility is what, as a good kshatriya, should be to punish him. But because of the association, deep attachment that he has for his relatives and his friends, what does he do? That attachment becomes moha. So not only does he give, is he willing to give up his dharma, that is, to give up his dharma of punishing those who commit adharma. He wants to then take up somebody else's dharma, which is, I want to become a sannyasi. Let me take a bhiksha patram and say bhavati bhiksham dehi and go. So what has he done? That raga has led to moha. Leads to delusion. So similarly, Shankara Bhagavad Pada says, when does this raga occur? Buddhau satyam pravartate. When the mind is present, then the raga is happening. So similarly, why Arjuna? Let's take our own example. The attachment that we have to our relatives is what? Nothing different from what Arjuna had. So if you look at it, the real loss itself is not the problem. Death is not the problem actually. Because if death was the problem, then when we look at the obituary column, we should be looking at all those people who are dying, and we should be crying from morning to evening. Because if somebody or the other is dying, so the death is not the problem. Rather, it is the death of somebody that we have developed a raga with, an attachment with. That is why, so if death was a problem, then we should have felt pain for the death of anybody. But why? The mind is feeling tragedy, it's feeling sorrow only when a particular death happens, of one particular, not even happens, just contemplating it. So what does that mean? It is a mental problem. It is not a physical problem. It is not a real problem. Okay, now you may think that a mental problem is also a real problem. We're not dismissing the fact that the mind will feel this. No, we're not dismissing it. What we are trying to say is be clear as to what is that source of the problem and identify whether it is you who has that problem or the mind that has the problem. We have to make that distinction. So anyway, so Shankaracharya is saying raga is a problem occurs when buddho satyam pravartate, when the buddhi is present. Buddhi here means mind. So when the mind is present, the raga is there. And when is the mind present? During the waking state. So when we are waking up, we have a raga. It is also present in dream state. That is why we sometimes see something that we deeply desire, that we are attached to in the dream state also. Even that means even the dream state, the mind is there, so we feel raga. Similarly, ichha means desire. So what is the difference between attachment and desire? So attachment is with the thing that we already have. So raga is the attachment to the thing that we already have. uh, Ichha is the desire for a thing that we don't have yet, but we want to possess. Anyway, then Sukham. Sukham means the happiness that is born from the association with Anatma. Because of Raga, if we get that item of Raga, then it gives us a Sukha. It apparently creates, so we think that object is giving us happiness. When really speaking, it is not the object that is giving us happiness, rather, it is our own happiness that is being reflected in the mind. The mind which was hugely agitated before in the desire, when when we are really desiring something, the mind is really agitated, and in that agitated mind, our own natural bliss is not reflected in that mind. So what happens? We feel a sense of um, an agitation, an eagerness to get the object of our affection. Now, once that object of affection has been secured, the mind becomes at peace, because the that which was giving us that burning, that deep desire that is causing the agitation, that agitation has quietened. And in that quietened mind, what happens? Our Atma Swarupa is reflected. So we experience happiness as though. But really speaking, did the object give us happiness? No. All the object did was temporarily quieten the mind. And in that quietened mind, our own Atma Sukham was reflected. And so we think that object gave us that Atma Sukham. Really speaking, the object did not give Atma Sukham. What happened was an agitated mind, and what is the reason for the agitation? Because of the Ichha, because of the Raga. So an agitated mind prevented my own happiness from manifesting, my own bliss from manifesting. And when the object of that agitation, when the object of raga is in our possession, then the agitation subsides, which leads to a quietened mind, which is more capable of reflecting my own bliss. So that is what is happening here. So we think that the object is giving us happiness, when really speaking, it is our own happiness that is manifesting. If we did not have the raga, if we did not have the ichha in the first place, what would happen? That is what he's saying here. And when is that capable? Some people have it when they develop vairagya. When they develop vairagya, that vairagya prevents that raga from acting, from agitating the mind. It prevents the ichha from agitating the mind. But alternatively, he says sushuptau nasti. So in the sushupti avastha, what happens? The mind is actually not present. That is why we are not able to see anything in deep sleep. So there are three states. One is the waking state that we all know. Second is dream state, that is also that we know. Then there is one state that we don't know much about. Vedanta says there is a third state, that is the deep sleep state. When we sleep, we say, I slept like a log. I did not know what happened. What does that mean? That means that there is one avastha called a deep sleep state, the sushupti avastha, in which we did not experience anything. Why did we not experience anything? Because the mind was not there, buddhi was not there. So he says, tan nashe, when the buddhi was not there in the deep sleep state, what happens? Raga, Ichha, Sukha, Dukkhadi were not there. So what is he trying to say? This is the Anvaya Vyatireka. When Anvaya logic is, when the Buddhi is there, you have all these problems. Raga, Dvesha, Ichha, Sukha, Dukkha. All of these are present when the Buddhi is not is present. Then in the deep sleep state, when the Buddhi is not present, when the mind is not present, Raga, Ichha, Sukha, Dukkha is not there. That is Anvaya. Yat Sattve, Yat Sattvam. If the Buddhi is there, all these problems are there. Yadabhave, Yadabhavaha. When the Buddhi is not there, these problems are not there. Tat Tasya Karanam. Tat Tasya Karyam. That is the cause for these. That means if the mind is there, then you have problems. If the mind is not there, you have no problems. Then what is the source of the problem? The mind. That is the answer. That's why he says Tasmat Buddhehe. All these belong to the Buddhi. Raga, Ichha, Sukha, Dukkha, etc. Do not belong to the Atma at all. They belong to the Buddhi. And this is why, because of the Anvaya Vyatireka logic, when the mind is present, these are present. When the mind is absent, these are absent. Therefore, it follows that they are all caused by the mind. And therefore, we must realize that they do not belong to Atma. They Tasmat Buddhehe, they belong to the mind, na Atmanaha. They do not belong to the Atma. So with that, we have looked at three verses in this session, and we will bring the session to a successful conclusion, and we will take up verse number 24 onwards in the next session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.